Hello. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, Ryan and Tadia and Liz. Nice to see you.
Hello.
Hello. All right. So Tadia, did you just say hello? Yeah,
Yes.
I heard you. Yeah, good. Hi, Linda.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. All right. So let's see. Everyone come on in, come on in. Go to the chat and give me a little sign in while everyone settles in. Ah. Ah, my brain, my voice. Okay, so make sure that you have, if you're a VDI student, that you've connected to VDI. If you're on your own applications, make sure to have Bridge open. And we're gonna open also Photoshop, since that's where we were last week. So that's where we're going to get it started. And here we go. All right, so I hadn't sent, I don't need to, but usually what I try to do is send the link for the class every week. So I just sent it right before the class started. So just so you know, in case you need to check it, but you obviously have it because you're here. But if some of you guys didn't have it, that would be all right. So I did I change the name of this for some reason? My shortcut isn't working. And Bridge. All right. So come on in, everyone. Settle in, open your programs. I've got Bridge open and I've got Photoshop open. Remember, we were working on that image with the vases. So if you, let me share my screen. If you are in the basic setup for Bridge, what you have is the handout, not the handouts, the files that I have provided the class as the last thing that's worked on. If you go into Photoshop and you have your own Photoshop files, program, you should see here under recent, the work that we did last week. And as you can see, it says 7 days ago, 7 days ago, and it's showing me the image from before. Now, if you're in VDI, this sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. Why? Because every time you sign into the computer in VDI, it kind of thinks it's a new connection. And sometimes it can't find it. It says it's not there. And sometimes it does. So that's a VDI issue. It's not, so if when you try to open from here, if you're at home, you should be able to easily open the file that we were working on last week, unless you've moved it to a different place, right? But I'm on VDI, and if I try to open this one, it might or not work. So I'm going to try it first. So I'm going to double click on this one. But if it says can't find, it didn't say can't find, it opened it. So that probably means that the whole system back and forth is working. But if yours says it can't find, then you need to go back here and find your My Drive. So if you click on this one and it doesn't open, let me know and I'll show you how to go back and find it, to find it yourself. So again, VDI is a little bit persnickety depending on what they've done at the school level. If they've cleared the whole memory from the school, at the school level, the school administrators, then this Photoshop goes, oh, I don't remember where you put this. So you have to open it yourself. That shouldn't happen normally. So all you Photoshop people who have it at home and who haven't cleared their memories, you should always be able to go to, again, to the start. When you open Photoshop with anything open, then down here it says recent, and it's showing me all of the stuff that I've been doing recently. And thus the most recent one should be that one. That said, today in in Photoshop for the Photoshop class I did this morning. I worked on this one, and then and I did a lot of work on it, and yet it's not showing as work today because right before class ended, there was a glitch in VDI and it canceled. So see, it's showing me as only 7 days ago, and the work I did today on it isn't there. So that's why I'm saying VDI is a little bit funky. So does everyone have this one open now? The Mexico one with the 2 pots that we did last week? If so, give me a big old yes, so I can see if we can continue from here. If you don't have it, or if you weren't here, then you would have been expected to watch the recording and get this done and have it. But say that you didn't and you watched it, but you didn't do it, I can give you this file. So let me know if you need it so that we can continue from here. So is anyone who does not have this file, and I believe there was someone who had not been able to access the files last week. Ryan, in the end, you did you accessed it when you joined us, right? And anyone else? Jenny, I don't see a yes. If you're going to follow the class, you need it. Do I need to give it to you? Everyone else seems to be saying yes. Everyone has a yes on their second computer, except for Jenny. So Jenny, let me know. You need it. Okay, you wrote in the thing that you need it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this file in. Jenny, you're on VDI, right? Jenny?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and put it. So then I'm going to go ahead and put it in here. So give me a second, you guys. I'm going to go to Google Drive, my drive, and digital light techniques file. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is give you a copy of this one. Oh, and I think you weren't here, Ryan, when we did this one last week as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put both of these.
I was there for the squares one, but then I went back and watched the video and I caught up with the 2 pots in one. So I'm
Okay.
all caught up.
So I'm going to go ahead and copy these, and I'm going to put these inside a new folder called, what's the date today? March 18th, catch up, I'll call it. And I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to paste them in here. So these will be the 2 files. So now if you refresh, Jenny, your digital sign techniques class file, go ahead and give it a little refresh, or just back out of it, like go back to shared drives and click on this again. Then you should see a folder
Okay,
called
I'm
March
trying to
18th
log in,
catch up.
so my computer's not.
All right, so when you log in, it'll be there. It'll be there. You'll see the March 18th catch up, and that'll be the files that you need to open today. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Someone else just tried to sign in. Hold on. All right. Okay, hi, Lisa. Go ahead and everyone go to the chat and give me a little hello. And that'll help later when I have questions with registration, with attendance. The chat is my backup if you have said hi in there. And now we're going to go back into this file. All right, so hopefully everyone has this one open now. I'm going to clear your feedback since basically at this point everyone but Jenny. Oh, Lisa, do you have this file that we worked on last week?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, good. Cool. So here we are. We had attempted a couple of things. One was to see how it worked to do a second layer, and we separated this pot, and then we saw that we can have it move around wherever we want, as if this were a composite of something. Again, we're not bringing in the shadow or anything, so it's not a perfect composite, but it's to show you how layered files can work. And then we had put it on top or below another file where we wrote some text, and notice that we can shift the order of these layers up and down, going over here into the layers. And let me put the little bright light on my spotlight on my mouse so that you can see it a little bit better when it has a little red dot on it. Okay, so here I am in the layers, and now I've just shifted the order of these layers by shifting them up and down like that. And although the color is pretty similar, you can tell that the 2 pots is on top of that. Okay, now one thing I'm not making a big deal of is the fact that how you have your Photoshop set up to start with implies whether you can work or not on a layer. So let me show you guys right now. If I want to work on this pot layer, which is this middle one, I have it selected. And then I can either click on this pot and make it move, or as long as this is selected in the mode that I'm in, I can click anywhere. I can click over here and I can still move my pot. And this tool, the move tool, I have it set that it only works when I select the right layer. And what I have is this tool, which is the move tool. This auto select is unchecked. It's unchecked. This is how Photoshop has worked for the past 25 years or so. But over the last, say, 3 or 4 years at this point, auto select automatically is always checked when you first install. So if you're a newer user of Photoshop and auto select comes checked, the tool looks a little bit differently, meaning when auto select is checked, I have to click on the thing that I want to move. So if I move the pot, I click on the pot. If I want to move the text, I click on the text. If I want to move the background, I click on the background. So it would seem simpler, right? Because you click on what works. But remember in the Illustrator file example that what's hidden is hard to move. So watch. If I grab this bottom layer, the one that's full, and put it on top, how do I now move the other two if I can't see them? Kind of like the Illustrator where I made yourselves a bigger object and then you didn't have any way to select them. So with this mode, you can't do anything to move the other two, because even if, like when I showed you first, if I were to click on this to move it, the moment I try to move it, I'll click on this and this is what's going to move. So in my case, I find this relatively limiting, but I also see that for beginners, this is a better or an easier way to work. Mine is always turned off. I invite you to have it on or off, whichever way you want. But when it's turned off, okay, let me show you. I'm going to turn this off for a second. My two pots is up there. Okay. So if this layer is, if this auto select is turned off, but I now choose my two pots, I could grab the two pots and move it down to the bottom, and I'm moving it just because I'm grabbing that layer. And if you look at that, see, my two pots did move. So I have control of moving my stuff even if I don't see them. Do I ever need that? Is it necessary or not? It depends. It depends on your image. Sometimes it's like, why would you want to move something you can't see? It can either be more confusing. Some people thought they left it on top and then they don't know how come it ended up on the bottom because they weren't aware that it had moved. So I see both sides of it. I'm happy for you guys to work with it off, or obviously on if you're accustomed to it on, in which case know that the move tool, you need to touch what you want and it'll move. If you ever find yourself limited by this, remember there's another way to use that tool, and that will happen when you need to have like higher levels of work. At this point, this works fine, but notice that what I'm going to do is have it off, and every time I tell you to move something, I'm going to go over here and select the layer and then I'll move it. So visibly, unless you notice me selecting the layer, it'll work the same way, because basically I'm going to click on this to move it. But in my mode, I could easily click over here to move two pots, and it doesn't matter because at this point, it's only the selected layer that moves. The point I'm making with this is that truly in just about every tool that we're going to use other than this move to, everything you want to change, you're going to have that layer selected. So say that right now I want to start retouching something and I start working on this. You haven't used retouch yet. But if I take one of these tools and start retouching something, it'll be trying to retouch the two pots in. So it's good to get accustomed to selecting layers, because it's for every other tool. You'll have to do that anyway. It's the only tool that has been shifted to work with you don't select it is the move tool. But for everything else, if I start working right now on this to retouch it, it'll ask me to select this, which is that and not that, right? Or it will retouch the wrong thing. So knowing how to pre-select the layer you're working on is still a crucial element and a crucial part of using Photoshop and Illustrator. As you saw, everything happens if you're clicking on the right element, and the same with just for InDesign. So still always be aware of what layer you're working on, and it's basically the best way to go long term. All right. Now remember that there's shortcuts to grab all these tools, and for the most part, they're the same across all three programs. So if right now I'm in the move tool, if I want to remember what the shortcut for the move tool is, you hover over it, don't click, and then the little tooltip says move, and then it has a V between parentheses. So that's the one. Who remembers the shortcut for the brush tool? B for brush. So go and click on the B and there you go, the brush. How about the T for text? Okay, there you go. Now I've got the text, the P for pen, and so on and so forth. They're not always that way. Like if I hover over the retouching tools, they're J, right? So some, after a while, they ran out of similes and now you have to just remember them. But anyway, that's the quickest ways to move amongst the tools. Most importantly, the one that I really want you to always remember is the V. Because it's kind of like your home tool. When you're not doing something in particular, you want to always be in your V or move tool, because it's kind of like the one that causes less issues. Other than moving stuff around, it doesn't alter stuff, versus if you click on the retouching tool, you got to retouch. If you click on the pen tool, it starts drawing, and so on and so forth. So the V tool, this is the same for InDesign or Illustrator. So now I kind of launched into this because I want to make sure everyone had these files open. Hi, Ali, you just popped in. Now that everyone, I believe, who's going to be here is here, I just wanted to remind you guys that next week we have no class because it's spring break. Okay, so it's kind of weird. The class started and then interrupted and then starts again, and the whole like spring break got moved, or beginning classes got moved. But basically, we will meet again the following Friday. Okay, and then I have another Photoshop class that should have finished today, but is going off one more week. And then after that, April 8th, I begin with Illustrator. So I'm teaching a full-on Illustrator class, and it is going to be happening in the morning on Fridays from 9 to, I believe, 12:45 or something like that, before this one ends. So if anyone here, you're going to be getting little bits and pieces of Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. But if you want to launch straight into Illustrator, you might want to take that one too, which means you'll have your whole Friday with me, which for some people is like, oh no, one too many. And for others it's like, yes, let's get into it. Whichever way you are, if you don't take it now, I'll still be teaching it in summer again. I'll be teaching all these classes in summer too, so you can go ahead and face it out. I haven't checked the roster yet. I believe there's still a few spots left in the Illustrator, but if it's full and it already says closed, email me and I'll send you a form. And then if I sign it, I can get you into the class. I'm not aware right now if it's full or not, but just letting you know that. Okay, so the same with Photoshop and digital. I'll be teaching them again in the summer. So I just wanted to announce that when everyone was here. Next week, all school is closed. Every office, every teacher, any class you have for next week, it's all canceled. But not canceled, it's spring break. Yay, canceled sounds bad. Spring break is like, yay. Okay, so back to Photoshop. All right. So one thing about these layers is that if you see them and you want to print this job, it'll print. If you don't see them, say I turn the eyeball off of the second pot and I print this, it won't print. So the eyeball on or off really means whether it is actually going to be seen in the final piece. Okay, so having the piece there. Now, if you know you'll never use this little floating base for anything and you don't need it, then it is extra pixels that are unnecessary. Go ahead and trash it. But if you think that at some point you'll need it, or you're trying out certain things or whatnot, then yeah, go ahead and leave it there, but just turn the eyeball off and then it's there for when you want it, but then it doesn't print. Okay, so here we have a layered file. And one of the things that we haven't talked about yet is how big is this file? How will it print? What can I do with it? Can I make a 36 by 72 inch poster? Can I make a 2 by 3 business card? Who knows, right? So there's this biggest part of this digital design techniques class. One of the important parts of it is to really have an idea of what kind of file you're using and when you can use it for. So I'm gonna back out for a second and show you in the handouts. So same handouts that you've reached, that I've shown you where to download the class files from. Then over here, there are, so this pipeline, Google Drive, shared drives, digital design techniques. There's a lot of handouts. And did I tell you already which one of these to read? Did I say that the first day? Probably not. I just want to make sure whether I said that. Okay, so there's a couple of handouts in here that I need you to read and take your time over this next, since we're not going to see you for 2 weeks, to have this under your belt so that when we talk about resolution and file size and resampling, resizing, you know, the difference between resolution printing for printing or pixels for web. I want you guys to not start completely from scratch with that conversation. I want you guys to have an idea about it so there's 3 different handouts. One starts with the word new, and it's called new pixels, comma, image size and resolution, I believe is the full name. And it's this one right there that I'm hovering over right now. And I just typed it into the chat. I need you guys to read that one. So how do you read from Google? Well, if you don't want to download it and print it, which there's no reason to, you can double click, and over here, you can read it and just kind of scroll through and read it that way. So that's one way to read it. Now it's 13 pages long. If you don't want to be in this mode to read it, you can download it and read it yourself. You can download it here after having clicked on it, or you can go back and then just right click and download it here and then open it on your own computer. You can download it from your phone and read it on your phone. You can print it out and put it in a binder, your choice. But I would like you to read that one for sure. And then there's 2 more next to them, which is how to resize images for print and how to resize images for screen. So it's the how to resize images for print and how to resize images for, I think, what's the full name of it? For email and web. Okay, for email and web, which basically it means for screens. And it should say mobile, whatever. That's what the name of the thing is. So those are the 3 I want you to read. But if you only have time in 2 weeks for one, 2 weeks, okay, you should have time for all 3. But say that you only have time for one. The one I really want you to read is the first one, end to end. Now, if you don't totally understand it, that's fine. Here's another one that's a good one: image resolution and print quality. So this one, it will image resolution and print quality. Okay, so this one right here, image resolution and print quality. So this one walks you through a few other steps. Now, notice that the samples that it gives you here, this window, see how it's kind of gray and it looks like this? That's the old Photoshop window. The new window looks like this, which is dark gray and with a little resample. But the information here is exactly the same as the information that is in this window. Okay, so when you read the other one, just keep that in mind. I have not updated that one yet, but the information is just as valid, but it doesn't have the new screenshots of the new windows. Nothing has changed. It just looks different. But the other, and it doesn't have a little preview. So anyway, just go ahead and get yourself a bit of a feeling for that. Notice that down here, I have a couple of other handouts. And if you notice, this one here is some Photoshop basics. And this one here is how to optimize images for screen, for web. So it also gives you some of the tools that Photoshop has for that information. And this is for retouching. So if you guys want to do a little bit of research on your own, you have all of this information that I've given you here. But hopefully another good one that some people enjoy, and I've heard people go, wow, I learned so much from this one, is the differences between Photoshop and Illustrator. Actually, no, this is not the one. Well, this one is good at explaining the difference between Photoshop and Illustrator, but where's the one that has the steps? Might not be here. There's one that has some basic steps. Okay, it might not be here. I'll go ahead and see if I can put it in there. If you see a new one that's not there, if I put it in, oh, I probably took it out because it had all the older version instructions. But anyway, it gives you, it's a little tiny mini tutorial on how to move photos into InDesign, Illustrator, InDesign, and have a final little piece, which is kind of what we're going to do here, but it's a good reminder. I'll put it in here, but I have to update it for the new Windows. All right, so basically these are not there for no reason. These are there for you to read and learn and enhance your knowledge. But as I said before, if you don't totally understand it, and if it's like you're struggling to get it, don't worry. I will take you step for step through the understanding, thus that my explanation will hopefully enhance. That way you've gotten it all like kind of sink in and go, yeah, I get it now, right? And then we'll do the hands-on actual practice about it. But this stuff is crucial. If you're going to be trying to create something for print and web and social media, and maybe an ebook, and maybe, you know, all these different mediums, a photo table quality book, coffee table quality photo book, a flyer, whatever you're creating, a brochure or poster, you need to understand whether, now back to Photoshop, what's up with this image? Is it big enough? Is it not big enough? What do I need to change about it to make it fit, not only in size, like say 5x7 by 4x6, but actually in resolution or in how many pixels it additionally has. It matters for me to know if this image is going to work for whatever item I am going to be wanting it to work for. Okay, so I'm not going to go deep into that yet because you guys are going to do all the reading and we're going to talk much more about it after class. But let's head back to for a second to Bridge, because I want to show you a couple of things that Bridge already has as part of its information that it gives you about a file that will inform you before you even open this file whether it's good enough or not for your needs. So when you click in Bridge on this image, you can see over here that it has a lot of metadata. Now, oh, let people in. There we go. So here's the thing. Some of you guys might not be seeing this little preview. If so, it's because this defaults to the Publish Word tab up here. So if you're not seeing preview, please click on preview here so that you see a little preview of this image. And then what you're seeing up there is has some information, metadata that comes with the file. And that metadata you can read down here. And this is the kind of stuff that we're going to need to know for this file before we start using it for a project. So this is the long version of that metadata. And then up here, it has kind of the summary, the reduced version of things I need to know. And over here on the left side, it tells me things about what camera took it, what ISO, what f-stop settings, stuff like that, which might or not matter to you at this point. The photo has been taken. So unless you're the photographer, who cares? This is the photo you have. If you're the photographer, then yeah, there's a lot that you can do to make it better, enhance it in the future, stuff like that. But right now, we don't care about this one. The photo is us. It's been given to us. And this over here tells me how many pixels per side make this image. So what it's telling me, it's got 3000 by 2000. So clearly the long one would be the width, 3000 pixels by 2000 pixels in height. So that's how many pixels this image has. And that is a limitation. That is a limitation beyond which I cannot go. There are new apps now, including Photoshop has a new feature that allows me to double the pixels, but this is pretty new from the last few years. In the past, you were truly limited. If that's as big as your file image was taken, maybe it was taken with a camera, 10 years ago, when that's as good as many pixels as the camera could capture 10 years ago with a digital camera, and you wanted to make this into a poster, sorry, this photo isn't big enough to make it into a poster. That's how many pixels it has. If you took it with a new camera, it could have 5,000 pixels or 10,000 pixels, depends on if how much you paid for your camera. Basically, many times it has to do with how many pixels it can take. Now, there is such a thing as, yes, too many pixels. Do you really need all those pixels? Well, you'll find out. Not really, unless you want to really zoom in tight and make a full-on poster of that one base instead of all the whole photo. And sometimes all those pixels are actually unnecessary, but it does give you the freedom to crop in to have more pixels. So anyway, we'll understand more about pixels after you read all that, but 3000 by 2000 is the only number that truly, truly matters here. Anything else that you read is changeable, modifiable, adaptable to fit our needs. What can't change is the max amount of pixels it came with. As I said, that has been so for the past 20 something years. Whoops, moved to the wrong one. But right now, yes, there are some things you can do to double the pixels and get this to work for a bigger thing. But I'll show you that later. So those of you who are in my Photoshop class, I kind of went through that today in Photoshop. So Liz just went through that process because she was in the morning class. Same with Mason. But right now you got to assume that that's a good limitation. So then if I click on this one right there, it's telling me that this is 3000 by 3000. If I click on this one, it's really tiny, 535 by 535. Notice that this one says 96 PPI. This one says 300 PPI. This one says 240 PPI. So this PPI word, what does it mean? 72 PPI. That stands for pixels per inch, which you're going to read about in the handouts. But just know that pixels per inch is only important if you're going to go to print. If you're not going to go to print, it means nothing. So for now, let's assume it means nothing. And we're going to talk about all of this in 2 weeks, right? So right now, we're going to be kind of slightly pragmatic about this because without you understanding in depth what this means, I'm going to just show you back to the photo that we're using, the Mexico photo. It does say 300 PPI down here, and that means it is okay to print this photo. This photo is ready to be printed. How we got to this 300 and what we did to get it to 300, you'll learn later. But this photo at 300 PPI, that's the Gonal number. That means, yes, this is good quality enough to print. And if you go down here to the dimensions in inches at 300 PPI, we can print this up as big as 10 by 6.5. That's as big as this image can be printed. Okay. So if I want, 11 by 16 or 20 by 18, no, it's not going to work. It's going to be a fuzzy, bit blob, messy photo. But anything this size and smaller will work. So it'll be a great 4 by 6. It'll be a great 3 by 2. It'll be a great 10 by 6.7. So will it be a good 10 by 8? Well, I'm going to have to stretch it a little bit, but it's just a little bit of a stretch. So it would probably still work. So all of that is what we're going to talk about in depth later. Right now, no, I just want us to look at this and go, oh, okay. So I can get about a 10 by 6.7, 10 almost by 7 image out of this thing. Okay. So you know that that's the max you should be considering using this, an image for this. So if this is supposed to be a poster, look for another image. All right. So now that we know what size this is, especially if you're in, if you're a Photoshop user that's going to go outside of Photoshop to do more to this, put it inside of a brochure, greeting card and something, you want to have rulers. And I like to have the rulers turned on all the time in Photoshop. How do you turn them on? People who like shortcuts, Control or Command R. People who don't like Photoshop, go up to shortcuts, go up to View and turn on the rulers by clicking on the word rulers. But you see here the shortcut Control R, so you can always learn your own shortcuts by looking at these menus. Turn on the rulers. And now here we go. On one side, we see that this says 10. The 0 starts right where the image starts. The 10 is at the end. And then here the 0 takes us down to about 6 3/4 or so, which is about the size right now that this will be, since it already is set up at 300 PPI. And how do we know? Even if we hadn't got into Bridge, down here, see where my mouse goes down to the corner, it's telling me at the left side, it tells me the zoom percentage that I have this image. And that was if I go up or down and zoom in. Sorry about that. Oh, please don't do that to me. For a moment, it did this weird thing that it did 2 weeks ago that I had to start again. Good, it worked. And then to the right side of that zoom percentage, it's giving me by default, and I want to make sure that you guys still have it, but it's telling me 10 inches by 6.6 and 300 PPI. Do you all see that number there, or are you seeing different bits of information down here? Down here. Someone told me that they don't see the bottom part of my share. Are you guys seeing what I'm pointing to that says 50%, 10 by 6? In the other class, there's someone who always says they can't see the bottom part of my share. I don't know. Okay, so it's possible that there's other information you can get from this little window. And so when you click on it, this one is giving me all the details of the pixels, 3000 pixels by 2000 pixels by resolution and stuff like that. So this is a little bit like that same information that I showed you inside of Bridge. There's also on the far right of this little guy, a little arrow. And if I click on that arrow, I could find different information that I want in here. I could find out about my document profile. And it tells me it's Adobe RGB. I can find out about, I don't know, what current tool I'm using. I'm using the Move tool. I could find out, just document sizes. So there's all this different stuff. The document dimensions is the one that we had before, and it's, I believe, always the default one. So you choose what you want in here, but for now, that's a good one. Okay. Is that working for everyone? I haven't left anyone behind. You all see what I'm showing you? All right. So, yes, Mary?
I had a question
Yeah.
about the rulers. So my ruler is showing up in pixels. How
Oh,
do I change from pixels
yeah.
to something else?
Yeah, that's true. The settings, you can change them in settings, or you can just change it right now, but this will change it only for this image. And then the next image will also have it in pixels again. So if you don't change it in the settings for all of them and you want to change them right now, put your mouse right in the ruler, the tip of the mouse in the ruler, right click and choose to change to whatever you want. In our case, you want to go to inches. So say that I were to switch to pixels, then that's what it looks like in pixels. Right click, centimeters, right click, inches. Okay. Now, because you've changed it just in this document, when you open another one, it'll go back to the default. So how you change things more permanently, the image has to be closed, which right now it's not. Right now it's open. But later, I'll show you here so you can go back into the recording. When the image is closed, you can go to Edit Preferences. Or if you're a PC, Mac user, you would go to the Word Photoshop Preferences. It's the only other difference between PC and Mac is where the preferences are. So Edit Preferences, and then you can go to Units and Rulers. And in Units and Rulers over here, you could tell it to show the ruler in inches or in pixels and stuff. If you set it right now, it'll still only respect this document. You need to have nothing open but Photoshop blank, and then you change it, and then it changes for the whole thing. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. This applies to all the programs. Again, this is exactly the same for Illustrator, Photoshop, and Design. The rulers you handle as a right click from here for each document. And if it's a thing you always want to change, then change it before you open something. Tadia, you have a question. Your hand is up. And if you're speaking, your sound is off, so I can't hear you. Tadia? All right, so I'm not sure if you're not listening or if you're not opening up your sound. So you need to unmute yourself if you want me to hear you. Let me go on to Jenny's question. And meanwhile, if I see that you're not, when you're back, you can try again. Maybe you stepped out or, oh, there you go. Or maybe, so you need to unmute. There we go. All right.
Yes, I had question. It was actually the same question. So
Oh, it's about the ruler?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then I'll lower your hand. Cool. Jenny.
I have been trying to get on VDI and it's just not, I don't know if it's my computer or what it is, but
How frustrating, Jenny. I don't know what to say.
can I share my screen? I mean, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong.
Okay,
or-
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and share
Okay,
your screen.
Hold on.
VDI works when it works, and when it doesn't work, it's like, aha,
And
pull your
Also,
hair out.
sometimes rebooting can help. Rebooting the
can.
whole
I
system down.
did already, like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's already bumped out and
I've
in a
been
few times.
trying. Okay, so I go here. What I'm having trouble is with Chrome.
Okay, you don't need Chrome. Stop.
Not Chrome,
Oh, Google Drive.
with the Drive, yeah.
Okay, so go to the Drive, go do what you just did. Click on that. Click on the little tiny icon. Yeah. Oh, try again. Okay, then let's go to the, wait, don't go there. Go to the gears on the top right. Yeah, and then just go to preferences. And disconnect, go back to the gears again. To the little gear, no, the,
I'm
in this
just,
big
oh, I-
window that, yeah, there.
I'm just moving that.
Oh, got it. And say disconnect account on the above. Yeah. And say disconnect. Sometimes you just need to reset just that. Okay. And now go ahead and give it a second. Okay. And then sign in with browser again, and then sign in again with your pipeline email. And then scroll down a bit to sign in. And you're in. So hopefully now if you open Bridge, it should work. So go ahead and close this, close all this. You don't need that anymore. Yeah, and now say okay to that and you're ready. So open Bridge and we should see the files. Not there, not there.
Oh.
Click away. Yeah, so go down to the start icon on the bottom left. Yeah, click there. And so just, no, yeah, so that's not showing. So go in where it says type here to search, click and type here to search and write for Bridge. Bridge, just type Bridge. Yeah, so there it is under apps. Click on Adobe Bridge 2021 and it should open. And then while that's happening, you can go down and then type here Photoshop and open Photoshop.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, say okay. Oh, let's see what's happening. Cancel. Okay, there's your bridge. So
Okay.
if you go to the left, go to this PC. This PC. It says DVD drive. Not responding.
Yeah, that's what,
There it is. This, okay, so now say close to that. Close.
it's not closing. Oh, there we go.
Okay, yeah, it isn't, everything isn't absolutely instant. Oh, so you haven't, like, you need to sign into, this is, okay, go ahead and put in your entire email address
Oh,
again.
It wasn't even letting me do,
No,
all
this is
this.
the cloud, this is a Creative Cloud, like you need to sign into to the Adobe right now. So email address at pipeline, the whole thing. So .sbcc, you have a comma there. Okay, say continue. The first time you use the cloud products, you need to do this. And since you probably haven't used them for a while, it signed you out and you from the whole cloud thing and has you
oh, okay.
come in again the first time. So, okay, so now you're ready to go. Now go to this PC. And now go find Google Drive, which is the third thing in. Double click on that. Shared drives.
Oh.
No, shared drives. Click away and then, yeah, shared drives. Now Digital Sign Techniques on the left side. The left, no, of the two folders, the second, no, it's the first one.
This
Is
one.
digital, is that, yeah, double click. And it's coming up. It takes a little bit to come up, especially since you're sharing and zooming and all that. All right, so give it a second and then
Okay.
scroll to the top because the first one. Scroll up. And the first thing, see that first folder? Don't double click on it. Go grab that first top left folder. Yeah,
This
that
one?
one. Yeah,
Okay.
that one. Don't double click. Drag it to your left where it says drag favorites here and put it in there. Let go. Where it said drag, it was fine first when you said drag favorites here, then you moved it up. So go back again and do that again. Do what you just, oh, it's say stop because you moved it somewhere else. Stop, stop, stop. You were doing fine and then you moved it to something else. So grab it and drag it down to where it says drag favorites here. You see there on the left? Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah. Yeah. So right to the, just to the left.
Oh, hold on. It's not. My computer is, I need a new one.
Mouse. Maybe it's still trying to do that copy that you did. Okay, we'll let it be for now. I was just trying, if you put it there where later when you come here and say drag favorites here, then you can just link and go straight there instead of having to do the whole thing. Go ahead and
Okay.
double click, go ahead and double click on it to open it now. Forget the dragging.
Yeah.
And then go to March 18th catch up. The third folder, double click and then open the Mexico PSD. And there you're with us. And it'll kick Photoshop open for you
Okay, thank
by
you.
double clicking. You're welcome. I'm gonna stop your share.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. Okay, yeah, sometimes it gets tricky, and in your case, it was telling you that you hadn't signed into Drive, but I don't know why I was asking you about the Drive, but anyway, moved around. Okay, let me share my screen again now. All right, here we go. A little bit lost on where I was at before Jenny's question. I think Mary had asked something for what, remind me again up until where I had.
We're
Tanya
talking
had-
about the rulers. How do you, I mean,
Oh,
that was my
okay,
question.
the rulers and resolution and stuff like that. Okay. Yeah, okay. So if we want to work with this in as a bigger project, okay, so here's the deal. If this is going to be a single page something, a postcard with one side only, or a, you know, a photo that you're going to print to put in a frame or something like that, you don't need to leave Photoshop. Even the text that I put in here, if you're just going to print this out as one piece, just a little print that you're going to put in your, maybe it's someone's birthday and you go, oh, happy anniversary, and you write it inside of Photoshop and all that. You can just do that in Photoshop. And there's a whole bunch of tricks and tips and tricks of what you can do in text in Photoshop. It used to be very limited. Now you can do very advanced text, but it's not the ideal place to do text. And it is certainly not the place to do any kind of text that really needs a lot of editing, or definitely nothing that you're going to do more than one page. The only thing that I'm going to not correct myself, but underline, is that when you design web pages per se have multiple versions of them. If you click here, it looks like this. If you click there, it looks like that. So then Photoshop in that case allows you not to do another page per se, but another artboard. So I'm going to just stop that. And when I get into the conversation of artboards in Illustrator later, I'll bring it back into Photoshop and see how it works in Photoshop. But right now, the basic 99% use of Photoshop for anything other than for web pages implies that you will use it only for one page things, okay? Like a photo print. When you want to actually put in text and logos and stuff like that, what we're going to do, remember we talked about, is we're going to open up InDesign and work in InDesign for that kind of stuff. So right now I'm going to stop right there. And what we're going to do, let's go get this little duplicate pot thing that we did. Does everyone have this little floating pot? So this little floating pot, for better or for worse, could be a logo on its own, say that it's very emblematic of this inn or something like that. Of course, it would be better if we had a photo of it where it had the little handles on the side, right? Or something where the silhouette would be better. But I'm just kind of bringing this up as an example of taking something from a photograph and bring it into Illustrator. So take it with a grain of salt. It's not the best image of a vase once you see the silhouette, but I want to show you how to make that process happen. So first of all, one thing we're going to do with this little vase is we're going to create it as its own little element, its own little page. Okay, so you can do that in many different ways. The easiest one at this point is to select this layer. Okay, so see how over here on the right, I'm selecting that layer. Then I can go ahead and hold down the Control or the Command, sorry, no, the Alt or Option key. Hold on. Oh, I always, since I'm a Mac user, right? And so whenever I'm on the VDI for the PC, I have to test again to see which is the right one. Yeah, it is. It's the Control or Command. So hold down the Control key and then single click this little thumbnail, and you will have now marching ants, which is the selected area. Everything inside of that little set of live little lines, which we call the marching ants, is become an active selection area. So does everyone have a little active selection area around your little pot? Yeah. Okay. So there's so many ways to do this, but one way to do this is just copy paste. So let's do a copy. Control or Command C for non-shortcut people. edit, copy. And then we're going to create a new file. So we're going to say file new. Command or Control N gives you a file new as well. And the default settings, remember last time we started a file in Illustrator and I told you guys that here you would have to choose what you want to do. But we have something in the clipboard. When we did that copy, let me cancel this, you don't cancel it, but when we did that copy, where that information of the shape of this vase went into something in the computer called the clipboard. And the clipboard is holding that vase in shape in its memory. And so it says, do you want to create a new document based on the clipboard? And that's exactly right. So we don't need to care about any other, and we just go, yeah, create. Because now what it does is it gives me a square box. For some reason, it gave me one that started with black. By my settings, by default, I changed them the other day. You probably have a white one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go, when I was showing this to someone the other day, because when you say create new, the basic settings are white, but I had mine set up to be black in the background, which is not typical. I was just showing this off to someone. So normally it's white. So I'll say create, the background is white. And now we're gonna paste that vase in here, either again with a shortcut of Control or Command V, or go to edit and paste. And here's that Control V for the shortcut. I'm gonna say paste. And as you can see, it created a file exactly pixel by pixel, the size of this that was in my memory. How's that going?
Good.
All right. Notice that if I turn off the background, it's going to show me that it is floating. It didn't like squish it into that color. That's just a floating background. But by default, the floating background, unless when I just showed you that, if you do the new, you can have it be by default transparent, something like that. But the default is always white. So why show you different ones? As you saw, it could be black or something like that, but the default is always white. So basically, normally when you paste, you end up with this white background on the bottom. Okay. Now, here's the thing about file management. I haven't had us clean up this vase that we all made. I've had us just do a quick little catch of it. So notice that the bottom of mine is looking a little bit iffy and stuff like that. That's okay. I'm going to teach you a bit more about selections. I spend a lot of time on getting good selections when you're in the Photoshop, the entire Photoshop class. Right now, I'm more interested in the whole mechanics of getting things from one place to another. So if I turn this one on, the only reason I can, let's say better more than if, but the only reason I can turn it on and off is because this is a layered file. And so if I want to keep these separate from each other, which would be ideal, I have to now save this as a Photoshop file. Or there's one other choice, which is a PNG file. Actually, there's a third choice now, a TIFF file also. But the easiest one for all us to use is PSD. I'll explain a little bit later about the difference between a JPEG and a PNG and why you want that. The only thing we don't want is a JPEG. Why? If we save this as a JPEG, this will smoosh and flatten onto this, and now you will have one flat image of a vase on top of white, which means, and let me give you, and this is just right now what I'm doing is just to give you an approximation of what that would mean that if I go into, say, in here and bring that into another document, it'll come in like this. Paste it onto white, like it won't be its own little floating version anymore. That's what a JPEG would look like. So say that I'm trying to bring this vase into a web page to float next to a nice little text saying, come and buy my beautiful vase. It'll be smushed against white instead of being cut out. So JPEGs will always give me that kind of effect. And I don't want that. So in order to look like it's floating like this, we need it to be a layered file. Yes, Liz?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the PNGs, if we bring it back in as a PNG, will that change the size at all of the?
No,
element?
I'll talk a bit more later about file formats, but no, a PNG is the only other so for the internet, the 99% of the times, the kind of photos you bring into the internet are JPEGs, except for when you need something to float like this.
Clear, right?
So if you want something to float, because this is your web page and you want this little guy to float around, then as I just showed you, you can't bring in a JPEG because it'll
Right.
look like this. So what you need to do is you need to save it as a PNG, which will allow you this same transparency. But the PNG is only used for web pages. So say that I want this little cutout to be in my brochure, I can't use a PNG. PNG is not for printing. It's only for webs. Okay, I can't print a PNG. So
Okay, quick question on that. Sorry, just before we move on, because
I'd like to wait,
okay,
Liz.
go ahead. Go
I,
ahead.
I want to finish the idea that I just, you've
Go
heard
ahead.
a bit more about this because you're in another class, because I just threw something totally new out. So I want to explain it a little bit more. Once again, there's two file formats that you can bring an image to that's pixel based into the web, and that's JPEG or PNG. Now, when it's a vector file, it can be an SVG. There's other formats for the web. Okay, so we'll talk more about that. But for pixel-based files, which are these Photoshop ones, I don't know if have I taken you all the way to the pixel level? Have you gone like plus to see the pixels of this thing? I think last week, did I do this with you guys? Zoom all the way in to see the pixels? Okay, well, not good. This is what I did last time and it messed up. Come on, fix yourselves. Fix thyself, Photoshop. Yes. Come on. Please tell me that you will fix thyself. Okay. It doesn't like, it reduced my whole resolution. Everything is really tiny now. And when it does that, it's a mess. And I won't be able to. Okay, so now all my everything is so much tinier, and I just changed the resolution of VDI, and it's a shortcut that I look down and I do by mistake because I try to do a Mac one and see how tiny things are. It's gonna be so hard for you guys to see, but I don't know right now how to fix it, so deal with it because I can't change it right now. I've tried to change it before and I had to disconnect from VDI, go back, go in, and it's been a disaster. But anyway, so right now, what I did is I changed my file resolution in VDI, so everything looks really tiny. I'm sorry, I'll make a point of showing you later how to fix that. But anyway, so I was going to the conversation I was having is JPEG versus PNG. A PNG allows me transparency only if I'm going to the web, or JPEG, which is basically a square. So this whole image of Mexico with the green and the white and the jig could be a JPEG because it is a rectangular image. But if I want a cutout, I need to save it as a PNG. If I am not going to the web and I'm going to print something, then I need to save it as a PSD, or Photoshop document is the best version or the best way to save it. And it maintains its layeredness, so to say. So I am going to have us save this file as a PSD, and then we're going to see what we do in Illustrator and in InDesign with this little guy. So Liz, I interrupted you when you're asking another question. I just wanted to go back to that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just because I keep hearing you say that the PNGs are only for the web and that we don't print on them.
Yeah.
But so what about if you're doing like, so I do this dog portraits that I draw digitally, and then I might print them on a mug or on something. And so I do use PNGs to print. Does that make sense? Am I doing that wrong?
Yeah. I mean,
so if I need a cutout and not the whole image, it's the only way to do it is to give them a PNG. Or maybe there's another way and I shouldn't be using the PNGs. PNG. Sorry.
So who is doing the printing for you?
Like on demand places.
And they ask you for PNGs?
Yeah, for certain things like, well, they don't specifically, it's one of the file formats, but the only way, like, so for example, if I want to cut out the background and just get the dog, on a mug or on something instead of having a rectangle, you know,
Yeah.
format for it. That seems to be the only option for me to get them without the,
They don't have like the option of PSD or TIFF or something like that. It's okay. I mean,
yeah, possibly, maybe because I haven't been working in Photoshop because I've only been on Procreate. So I didn't have those
Yeah.
options there. So maybe that's why. Okay, so Photoshop, I can send clear as well.
so here's the deal. I was trying to recreate whatever I did that changed the I can't change the resolution. I don't know what shortcut I did it by mistake that gave me this smaller window, so I can't change it. So what happens is that if you give them a PNG, they probably know how to handle it and they transform your file, right? So it's okay because they know that people don't know that much. There's so many people doing now crafting and stuff and mugs and whatever and Cricut and all that stuff, or Cricut, I don't know how to pronounce, and sublimation.
Okay.
So everyone's doing it and they don't know anything about all this stuff. So they send them whatever they send and then they fix it. But if
Got
you
it.
were to say, want to print this as a high quality PNG file and put it, say, in, or say that you're sending this as an ad of your pottery making skills to the Independent to get people to come, and you make a little ad and do a PNG, they can't print it into the Independent, for example, right? So I have a feeling that what this company is doing is taking whatever you give them and figuring it out. And yes, does it stay layered? And can they then turn that into a different layered file and print it out, make it into an EPS file? Yes, they can, but they have to process it after that. They can't straight out of the PNG print correctly. It just doesn't give you that.
Gotcha. And we will be able
resolution.
to do that straight out of Photoshop. We will be able to send clear files, translate
Well,
files.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, and this is important, remember that I told you that if I were to try to print this and if I don't want the second file, I need to turn it off. If I don't want the second file, I turn it off. In this version, what I need to do, if I don't want the white to print, I need to turn the eyeball off the background or get rid of it completely and just have it be only a floater. And that's fine, right? So either way, turned off or actually gone, I could just delete this background, put it here in the little trash and have it be gone. Then that is only a floating file and it has no background. So now if I were to even try to save this as a JPEG, it'll go, or I'm going to flatten you. Is that okay? And you'll have to go, okay. And it'll end up with a white behind it. But if you save it as a PSD, it'll be fine. As a PNG, it'll be fine. Now you can't really save as a PNG. You need to export as a PNG, but anyway, we'll get there. So now we all have, I'll return this little background to it because I didn't necessarily tell you to turn it off, but do turn the eyeball off. Okay, so now we're left with this little guy, which is a floating little vase. Let's save it. And so we're going to go ahead and file management and understanding where things go is very crucial.
Diana,
Yeah.
and so sorry, it's Lisa. What I had to take a quick phone call. What was the step after you selected the pot that you to put it into copied into that little square?
So I said copy after I selected the pot, right? So all
Oh, you
I
just
did was-
copied?
I just said, yeah, I just selected and said copy.
Okay. And then and then pasted it in a new.
And then create new, file new.
Okay, yeah.
It'll ask you to whether to create from clipboard and you say yes. And then you paste, and then you'll see that the file that got created is fairly bigger than your base, right?
Does it say-
To the edges of the.
It just says new, not create new, right?
Well, when you say new, create, it says new document.
Right,
from
then you create,
clipboard,
yeah.
then you have to click on create
Yeah, okay, yeah.
to make it happen.
Okay.
And then you paste. So Command or Control V or edit paste. And then it pops in there.
Got it. I got it. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else who needs to create this guy? Because we're about to save it. You all good? All right. So I'm going to clear your feedback. Cool. So now we're going to save this guy. And first of all, remember how I said we need to have an idea of how big it is, just to have an idea of what's happening. And we kind of got an idea of how big the rest of it was. But I can go down to this thing that now is so hard for me to show you. And I definitely need to get some tech support to figure out how to get the resolution of this VDI to change again. But down here where I had shown you before and we could read it, now we can see, I can barely read it. that it's 2.3 inches by 2.2. It's almost a square, 2.24 inches by 2.3 inches. You see this down there? Way down there.
Yes.
So we have an
Mine's a-
idea of how big that will be because it says 300 PPI. That's the only thing that this number means anything to us. It says 300 PPI, meaning in real life, if I print this on a piece of paper, that's going to be about yay big. Okay. Which is fine, say for the front of a brochure, something like that, for a business card, or anything smaller, but it's not good enough for anything bigger. Because if I try to make it bigger, and again, we'll talk this more about this after the break, then that means forcing this image, Photoshop to invent pixels to interpolate, and it'll ruin the quality. So here we go. Let's save this guy. So let's do file save. And if you just say save, because you don't know save as, for some people that's already complicated. If you just say save, and it will, and you say, let's all say save on your computer if you still have this thing up, it will still give you the save as window. Like it cannot save it as a JPEG or whatever it does. In this case, it doesn't even know what to do because it's not been a file. So see, in the end, it's giving you the save as window, because in the end, you should have probably check the save as window. See if I can, God, it's so tiny. All right. So so let's call this one a jar. What is this? A vase, a jar, a pot, red jar. I don't know. Let's call this
Say
one
pop.
red. Let's red jar. I'm going to call it red jar. And then here I have choices. Save as Photoshop PSD or PDF or TIFF, or see how it's not giving me the PNG that you guys are talking about? You can only export as a PNG. You can't save as. So right now I could save it as a TIFF or as a PSD. They're the only layers that hold. Now there is a version of Photoshop PDF that holds layers, but we really don't want to be working with images in PDF until it's ready to go to print. And then there's a large document format, which, you know, if you're doing huge posters and stuff, which this one isn't. So the only options really here for us are TIFF or Photoshop PSD, or keep it in Photoshop PSD. Now, for you guys who are working within your own computers, subscription, so you're going into your own computer files, go ahead and save it in the same place as the files that were created. But for those of us who are on VDI, we need to switch. So we need to go back to, you can't save in the shared drive. So we're going to go to Google Drive, click on Google Drive, then open My Drive, double click My Drive. And then I hope I had asked you to make a folder. I know if you did, Digital Design Techniques, and put it in there. If not, just if this is your only class, you can just drop it in your My Drive. So now I'm in my Drive, and I get to say save. Okay. Here we go. This whole maximize compatibility that comes up, you always want it to say yes. So if you're at home and you are using your own system, you might as well click on don't show again. I always have to show it because in the end, I need to explain it, but you always want to say yes to it. It means that you can open this with older and newer versions of Photoshop. So it'll do the best to not put anything in there that later you won't be able to open. So this is a constant yes. Okay. So I'm going to say okay to that. And now you've saved it as a layered file. All right. Let's go ahead and leave these two open. And let's go down. And now we're going to open torn between going first to Illustrator or first to InDesign. I showed you guys Illustrator last week. So let's go ahead and show you guys InDesign today. InDesign takes way longer to open. It uses way more of your system resources even than Illustrator or Photoshop. It's a hog. So I don't want us to have open both Illustrator and InDesign at the same time. So let's not open Illustrator yet. And let me give you a chance to open InDesign, which is something you haven't seen yet. And most of you have a bit of experience in one or the other of Illustrator and Photoshop, but many of you, except for Linda, have never opened InDesign. So most of you, except for Linda. So let's head over to the start thing here and look for Adobe InDesign. And if that's not showing up for you, then you can go to the whole search, type here to search, and you can write InDesign, but it's one word, okay? Don't type in space design, just like InDesign is one word, even though it's uppercased on the D, and then click from there. And let's open up InDesign. And as I said, it's going to take quite a while. It's a big system resources hog. I do not know why, but it is. Okay, so it's opening up in the background. It's doing its thing. Okay. Give me a sec here. Just reminding my kids that I'm teaching to keep it a little bit down. Again, it's not their fault. I'm in the middle of my living room. I have a little paper blind that hides me from them, but sounds, no, I'm not hidden. All right, so InDesign is where we're going to do the layout. Okay, InDesign is where we're going to create that skeleton inside of which we're going to bring in our material. So we're going to be using InDesign right now, and we're going to create this as a postcard. Okay, but it's going to have two sides. So we're going to have an image on one side, and on the other side, we're going to have some other information. Oh, this is also showing up. My whole resolution is messed up. But anyway, so here's InDesign. Completely nothing in the history, unless you've ever done it. So as opposed to Photoshop, we don't start with a file that's already open. We start with a file that we create from scratch. Usually, Tadia, you have a question? Something's not working?
Yeah, I have my home programs and I have icons for illustration, Bridge and Photoshop, but I don't have this.
You don't have are you working on VDI?
No, just home programs. I mean, I have own programs.
If you purchased Creative Cloud, you should have it. Go ahead and share your screen. You might need to download it still. Share your screen with me. If you are subscribed to the Creative Cloud, you do have it. You just probably didn't download it yet.
Yeah.
So share your screen by clicking on share screen. And then choose desktop and then go to the right, and there's another button that says share in blue with white letters. Are you on a Mac or on a PC?
PC.
What's that?
PC.
PC, okay, because if you're in a Mac, it'll also tell you to do permissions and stuff. So tell me what you're seeing. I can't help you if you don't like describe. Kind of like the radio, there's never radio silence. I speak so much.
I was just looking for where to get this speaker first and share the screen, and then no, well, now I don't see the.
So when you said the big green share screen, choose desktop, and then on the bottom right of that same window, you should see a little button that's blue with little white letters that says share. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so let's go to your, this is the, oh, you're on a Mac, not on a PC. You're on a Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you said you were on a Windows machine. You're on a Mac machine.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
No, that's fine. That's why it's confusing. Well, it's just that where you open is this. So go up to the very, very, very top of the screen. Hopefully you don't have Zoom stuff in the way. See how the far right where it says your name, Tadia Puentes? You see that?
Yeah.
Okay, now start moving to the left until you get that with that icon that has a big red dot. That's your Creative Cloud. Click on that. All right, so it's showing you that you have updates available. So you do have it. So there you go. Click on open. I thought you didn't have it installed, so I was going to show you how to download it. You do have it installed. So later I'll show you how to find it on the Mac. I'll show you how to find an application that you already do have installed. But right now you do have it. So there you go. Now, while that's opening, because as I said, it'll take a while. go to that little icon that's floating up and down. Let's see if it works while it's floating up and down, and right click on it. Let's see if it, and say options
Yes.
and say keep in dock. Click on to the left, keep in dock. Yeah, there you go. So now it's just available just like Bridge and Photoshop are. It's there so you can. All right, so say click on the top left X there that is trying to teach you stuff. Go to the no, don't turn it off. Go to the right. See how it's showing you stuff and there's a little, yeah,
Okay.
close that window. Yeah, sorry when I yell, it's because I want to stop you before because InDesign takes so long to open. I don't want you to have to reopen it if you close it. All right, so go ahead. We're in the same spot now. So you're going to click on create new. I'm going to stop your share because now this is where I am. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I had taken you to the Creative Cloud app because I was going to have you download it, but you did have it installed. So I need to show you how to reach applications that are already installed. But since I put it in your doc for you, now you'll just go down and see it in your doc. All right. So did InDesign open up for everyone?
You might want to share your screen again. Oh, there you go.
Yep. Okay, so for Mac people, it says create new. For PC, it says new file, but basically let's head over there and start with that new file or create new. All right, so it's so tiny. So here we go. Does this remind you, because we went through this in Illustrator, remember? We had to decide what kind of file we're going to create. In Illustrator, we also had illustrations. We had a bunch of different stuff. But here in InDesign, you only have print or web or mobile. That's much simpler. These are the kind of 3 things that we can do, which is still a whole bunch, but that's all we can do. So let's head over to print. By the way, as you can see that if you go to web, it has a couple of basic web sizes and it has some templates here that you can use. We're not going to be using templates right now, but there we go. Mobile, it shows you the different main photos. And then if you want to see more presets, say that you want more than that, you click over there and it has sizes of whole bunches of different devices and stuff like that. Let's head over to print. And why I start with print is because print is the one that your Photoshop images need the most pixels. So if your image is going to work for print, then for sure it'll work for screen, but not vice versa. It's possible that you have an image that's only good for screen, but that if you choose it, oh, I love this photo, and you start working and make a web screen stuff, and then you try to use it for your brochure, your website, your poster, your card, suddenly you discover, oh, it's a crap photo for that. And now you're stuck with stuff that doesn't work. You know what I mean? So unless you're sure that you're only going to the screen, you got to start with the print as your biggest choice. So once again, here in the new document, letter size, legal, tabloid, letter half. So if you want to see other choices, click on view all presets as far as things that are ready to go. And so here it shows you A4, A3, just other kind of stuff, business card and whatnot. So for now, notice that if you keep going down, there's some pretty cool templates that when they say free, it's stuff provided to you by Adobe. When they start, oh, I guess all of these say free. Interesting. Usually there's paid or not, but these are all things that you can use as samples. We're going to ignore these later. You first need to understand how to use a program before you can really get into using a template, because you need to understand how to use the stuff. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to ignore all of these. We're not going to use any of them. And what we're going to do is we're going to create our own. Okay. So first of all, say that you want to create a postcard. Do you have any idea what's a traditional postcard size? Say you want to create a greeting card and you need to send it in the mail. Say it's an announcement for a wedding and you need to be able to put it in the mail. How would you even start to do that kind of stuff? Research, anyone? What would we do without Google, right? What would we do at this point without Google? So it might seem simplistic, but you need to know. You can't just start design. I can't tell you how many times people just open something and make a design and then go, oh, how do I turn this into? whatever it might be, right? So this right now, for some of you guys, it's like, why is she even going there? And other you guys are like, oh, wow, that's true. And I know that it's falling differently, but you need to know what's your final output. Okay, so for all the things that we're going to do, your first thoughts have to backtrack and go, what's my final output? Am I going to want a big poster out of this as much as also a business card and a website? You kind of think of all of that. Definitely an InDesign. Is this going to be a big old, you know, photo coffee table book? Is this going to be a little book, tiny mini booklet of instructions that go inside of a box of a product? Like, what is it that I'm making? Because that's what you're doing in InDesign, right? So let's do a quick little Google search and let's see what we come up with. What's a traditional, typical postcard, and why does it matter? Because postage is going to be different. If you make your postcard the size you want, and then if you try to send it, you discover that suddenly you have to pay double in postage because you didn't do it the right size, that, you know, the post office decides that this is the postcard price is different than a letter price. So you kind of need to do some research on that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go for postcard size. I guess I could have put a few more words, but and actually it's not a bad idea to actually go to the postal system and find out what they consider is a good postcard size. But if you go to a place like, you know, Vista Print that prints postcards for everyone, and it already tells you a little bit. So here it is, USPS, sizes for postcard. Okay, so I was going to go into there, but at least 3.5 inches high by 5 inches long, and no more than 4.5 inches by 6 inches. Okay, so that's the biggest it can be, and that's the smallest it can be for it to be able to be sent through the postal system as a postcard. Does that make sense? So let's take the biggest one, which is 4.5 by 6, 4.25, sorry, by 6. Okay. Now, when it talks about thick, it's talking about the thickness of the paper, and it's called, we call it weight, paper weight. Okay. And so paper is sold by weights. And so right now we're not going to care about that when we're designing it. It's not part of the issue of the weight. The only time the weight is an issue is if you're going to go and do a tri-fold or things like that, where the thickness of it, things might fold differently. But for the most part, right now, all we care about is the biggest size is 4.25 by 6 inches. So let's go ahead and make a 4.25 by 6 inches long postcard. So back to VMware. So sorry, to InDesign. So over here, oh yeah, so it's asking me width and units and length, and it's talking about this weird little 51 PO. What in the world is that? What's this pica? Well, these sizes are sizes that for eons, designers had all these different ways of measuring size based on, have you ever seen the old printing presses where they had lead rulers and red lead letters that they had to put one after the other and then press down, and there were these little dividers, and based on all of that, they have these sizes called picas and this and that. At this point, some people still use that, but by most people, if they're in this country, use inches. If they're in, I'm from Argentina, we use, you know, we use centimeters, but let's go for inches. Now, by doing this, the next time we try to make a document, it'll show up in picas again. So I'm going to have us close this first, close. And with nothing open, we can go and change the preferences of this first so that the picas stay. Now I've noticed that we stay in inches. I've noticed that in VDI that tends to revert sometimes, but if you are a Mac user, on top left of this document, right next to the little apple, you'll see the word InDesign. Okay, click on InDesign, and one or two choices under it says preferences. If you're a PC or a VDI user, go to edit and head down to preferences way down there. And then from preferences, you can go ahead and choose units and increments. Doesn't matter, anything general, but once you get to preferences, just if you go straight to units, then that's where we change the units. And this little window will open, and it's the same for PC and Mac. It's just where you get it that's different. We're gonna get into a break very soon. We're gonna open up this document and get the units going, and then we'll take our break. My alarm's been telling me it's break time, it's break time. So here we go. When it says ruler units, okay, it's basically telling me how I want the information to start, and right, see horizontal and vertical size, it says pica. So click over there, head over to inches, and change this one also vertical and horizontal to inches. We can leave the origin as spread. Is basically saying, do you want a spread or a single pie? The default one, leave it as spread. And a spread would be when you open a document, a book, and you open it like that. So I had to have a magazine right here. So this is a single page, and this is the spread, both pages. Okay, that's a spread, and that's how you use InDesign. Okay, so we're going to leave the stroke at points. We're going to leave everything else the same. And we're going to say, okay. All right, so now when we create new file, see how it's already in inches? Now, Tadia, you have your hand up. Is that from your question from before, or is it a new question?
No, I think it's from the earlier.
That's fine. I usually lower people's hands, but sometimes I forget. All right, Liz, you have a question?
Yeah, I haven't been able to get to that preference place.
Okay,
into
are you in
that
a
second
Mac?
box.
Are you in a
I know
Mac?
I'm on the
or in-
Chromebook.
Okay, but even in the Chromebook, you're in a Mac version.
PC
So go to
Ish,
edit
yeah.
and down to preferences
Edit. I don't see preferences. Oh,
the
you know what?
at the
There's
very
an
bottom.
arrow. Okay, no. It's because of that short
It's a
screen. I
smaller
got it.
window, so you need to go to the arrow. And then even if
Yeah,
you
okay.
click general, anything that you see, basically these are the choices. And so for all the preferences, so this takes us to units, general, interface, other stuff. So let's head over to units, and that's where you change to inches.
Okay, thank
Now,
you.
technically at this point, you should, every time you open a file, now it should be in inches. In the past on VDI, sometimes it has reverted to picas, which I don't know why, but in my regular Photoshop, it shouldn't. So anyway, new file, inches. So we had said it needed to be 4 1/4 by 6, remember? Or our postcard's going to be sideways. If you use this New Mexico image, we need it to be in that direction. So really, we're going to have it be 6 by 4 1/4. So let's see. For now, let's see if that's true. 6 by 4 1/4, and we're going to write that by 4.25. Now, I'm going to leave us there. I normally don't do a preview when I'm creating it because I know what the settings are. But down here, we have a choice to click on that and see a preview of what we're creating to start with. So it's not been created yet, but we're beginning to see a preview of it. And in this moment to teach, this is a good idea. So click on preview. And maybe you guys, by default, there was never a preview in the past when I was creating it. So I just do the settings and start. But I guess it's not a bad idea to have it as you're creating it to see if what you're doing is correct. A few more settings here, and then we're going to say create, and then we're going to go on our break. But I need to finish this up. Start first of all, it already is saying custom, right? Because, you know, none of this is what it's accustomed to do. 6 inches by 4.5 inches. And here it's asking me the orientation. By default, since I wrote 6 under width, and it already knows that it's orientation, but say that I had made a mistake and I wanted it that way, and see how it just shifts to that if you wrote it in the wrong way. But anyway, no, we do want it to be sideways, so we do that. Then it's asking me if it's going to have facing pages, okay, a spread. And is a postcard going to have facing pages? Is it going to be a spread? No. If it were yes, I would have had to click on that. Since it's no, I'll just say no. Then by default, it's giving me 2 pages. And does a postcard need 2 pages?
Yes, front
Aha.
and back.
Yes, exactly, front and back. So while they are not a spread, they don't need to be seen next to each other. They'll never need to have this effect going on where things kind of look. they still are 2 pages because we want to have them one in front. So we do need 2 pages for the postcard. Okay. Then if our pages are going to be numbered, do we need a page number? But not, so we just leave it at that. I'll talk later about primary text frame. We don't want that right now. And then we come to the next question, which is columns. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. We don't know yet in this design if we're going to need columns, probably since it's a postcard, probably not. For the front side, maybe probably yes for the back side. You know how postcards have this division where there's stuff that you write on one side and stuff address on the other side. But if we say yes now, then we'll be forced into having columns on both sides. So why don't we create our own? Sure, let's just create our own. So let's say, no, we don't need columns for now. So forget that. And then we have, I'm going to keep scrolling down. And it's possible that you don't have them open. It's possible that yours are closed. Mine are already open. It was possible that you just see after columns, you just see the word margins right there, closed. If it's closed, then you click on this little arrow to open them up. If it's already open, then that's what you're looking at. And so now margins in a document are that area beyond which you don't write anything that you need to actually be able to read. So once again, looking at this image that I have here, and somehow the computer knows it's not, I'm going to put it on my face because it knows it's not me and it blurs it. There you go. So I'm talking on top of this thing. I found this is the only way. So notice that this image has imagery that goes to the edge, but notice that the text has an area that's clean that doesn't have text. So that would be the margins for this page. The margins for that's my alarm saying, give these people a break for goodness sake. I'm like stopping it. Okay. So, so this is the area that we want to respect. Now, many times in magazines, you'll see like a little byline here saying page number right at the bottom here. It says page number, what does it say? Illustration dash Hongdian King. So it just is given it's telling us who made the illustration at the bottom. You see the, so that is possible. Sometimes that is hanging outside in the margin and sometimes not, depending, but there has to be a safe space beyond which we don't write. That's what the margin is. So it's an internal margin, and depending on the size of our document, that margin can be bigger or smaller, right? But basically what it says is don't put any text. It has to be read outside. And when you go to places like Vistaprint, or I don't know, Liz, where you do your mugs or stuff like that, but when you create products with these consumer kind of places, they tend to call this the safe space or the safe zone or something like that is what it's called. I'm not sure different names. I had to do some business cards in a hurry the other day for my husband, and I went to print them on one of these places, and I noticed that each one of these places has a different name for it, but something like safe printing area.
Different sizes.
That would be the margin that we're setting up here, right? So you probably want to avoid the first 1/4 inch, at least I would say the first 1/2 inch for anything that's written. Let's see, depending on our design. So let's, and 1/2 inch would take 1 inch away total from a 6 inch. 1/2 inch sounds about right. So let's go over here and change this. Notice that this is top, bottom, left, right. We could have different margins, but they're all linked right now. So if I click on this one and I click on to make this a little bit higher to, okay. Wow, it's avoiding. So if I put 0.5, once I hit tab or return, see how they all changed at the same time? Because they are linked. If I were to want to have a different top and bottom to left and right, I would have to click on this to unlink them, and then I can do different settings. But by changing only one, it changed all of them at the same time. And that's fine for now for this postcard. I'm going to keep them all at 1/2 inch. And when I look at my postcard, here we go. What changed in my preview is this is that line right there. That's marking me my, I'm gonna move this in. See that white, that red line that's in here? Can you see in your preview? That's my margin line. So if I consider that that's my whole postcard, not writing in this much is like, that's kind of a little bit too much, don't you think? For a postcard? probably it's taking too much away. So I wanted you guys to see this line really well. It's kind of pink on top and purple on the sides. That white line there is the end of my postcard. So let's go back and give it maybe just a 1/4 inch. So I can go down half and give it a 1/4 inch, and there you go. See how it moved? So now that's my safe zone, 1/4 inch. All right. Does that work? Everyone there with me? All right, there's one more important thing, very important thing, which either it's closed for you and you don't see it and you have to open it, which is down there. It's called bleed and slug. Weird names, huh? Bleed and slug. Let's open that bleed and slug and let's see what's up with my bleed and my slug. In this document, it's already showing me a bleed. It says for bleed, it says top, bottom, right, left, 1/4 inch. And if I look at my document, do you see outside of the white thing, do you see other lines right there?
No.
Do you see that gray?
Oh, yeah.
Right there and right there?
Yeah.
Okay, that is your bleed marker. Okay, so what in the world is the bleed marker? We're going to talk about that after break. Needless to say, we do need bleed for this. Why? We'll find out when we come back. And 0.125, which is an 1/8 of an inch, is the traditional bleed size. So we're going to say yes to that. We want bleed. Okay. I'll tell you why when we get back, because I know that it's been a while since I've let you go. So yes, we want bleed. Slug, we don't want slug. So it says 0, 0, 0, 0. I'll tell you what slug is when we get back. Right now, all I'm saying is this is ready to go. I'll explain bleed and slug when we get back. So now let's just say create. I'm going to wait for a second, make sure everyone has the settings correct, that it looks like this outside for you too. I want these lines to be like that. And if so, hit create. Is everyone okay?
I don't see that white document.
Okay, so look what I did down here where it says preview.
Yes.
I turned the check mark on preview. If I turn it off, then you don't see the white document. If you turn it on, then you should be seeing a white document behind you.
I have it on, but I don't see the white document.
All right, so I'm going to say create to mine to have that go, and then maybe you want to share your screen. So by the way, after I say create, there it is. The document that I created is there. I'm going to say control minus a few times so that you can see it better in the sense that you can see this red line that goes all around that. That's our bleed. Go ahead and share your screen for a second, Tadia, so I can help you.
I see it now.
Oh, now you see it. Okay, there you go. Cool. So let's leave it at that. Let's go and what time is it? 3:09. So I'm going to go ahead and give us a break until 3:20. So 10 minutes. Okay. See you guys in 10 minutes. All right. Sorry, guys. I'm in a couple minutes. I just created a new file in our handouts, which is why it took a little bit, a few seconds longer than I was hoping. I thought it would be fine. There's a good article online about JPEGs versus PNGs versus all of that I had seen the other day, and I had to search for it. So I put it in here, and I just created it, and it's this one. It's PNG. PNG versus JPEG versus PDF versus TIFF, right? So there's a lot of information here. I had other stuff there about file formats, but I liked how this one is described, so I just created this. This is the page I got it from, so I just copied from there. But I just wanted you to, oh, I noticed that when I did a header, this turned out to be a header, and the other pages too. Okay, so here I'm going to remove that header. Anyway, I need to fix that header because I don't want, whatever, doesn't matter. For now, let's leave it like that. I'll get that back. Anyway,
Donna, can you show the screen?
oh, sorry. Thanks for reminding me. You always got to remind me.
So what's the file name again?
So here's the handouts, and right now it's showed up at the end because I just created it, but later it'll reset itself in format by alphabetical order. And it's PNG versus JPEG versus PDF versus TIFF. So I changed the order a little bit because I gave you the summary of the whole thing here first, and then I proceeded to explain one by one because I kind of like the summary first. But I just wanted to make sure I had a good answer for you, Liz, because I also saw the other day that they were saying that I could put in a PNG for something else, and I thought, wait, you should be printing that for PNG. So I just wanted to go remind myself why PNG might or not work for printing, and I had forgotten the most basic thing to tell you guys. I haven't yet explained to you color RGB versus CMYK, so I'm going to be explaining that for a little bit. But that's the reason that you only want to print PNGs for things that you don't really need a lot of subtle color variations. But if it's a very, illustration like a cartoon, stuff like that, doesn't need a lot of color, it's fine to do a PNG. But once you're doing a richly colored photograph with density and hues and all that kind of stuff, you want to stick to JPEGs because it has, or PDFs or PSDs, because you can use RGB color for RGB and CMYK, which is ideal for printing. I'll explain this in detail when I get into that mode. But right now I wanted the quick answer to this. So it's possible to print. It just doesn't give you the best result. So say you printed something that you think is going to be a red like this, and when you get it back, it's a red, but it's really like a deeper red or a darker red or a greener red or a bluer red. It's not going to be the exact red you want because they have to transfer from RGB to CMYK to print. You guys will understand this in a little bit. So here we are with my semi-completed, let me get my little spotlight on my mouse again, which disappears every time I stop sharing, and that is so uncomfortable. I wish there was a way to get that to stay. Here we go. And let me explain a little bit what this whole bleed thing is and why I told you guys that we had to add bleed in here. So when you print an image, when you print I always have my samples here, and where's my no bleed sample? Okay, this is the best example that I have right now. I had another one, which is a little book, but I'm not seeing it right now. So see this little postcard? If I get nearer to it myself, it'll still be in focus. I'll put it by my nose. I notice that it assumes it's part of my face. So do you, there we go. So what is see around the edges of this image? You see a white border, right? Kind of like that margin that we were talking about. So the image does not go to the edges. An image like this does not need bleed. So if this is a postcard that we're about to create, and this is a postcard actually, but if this is the postcard that we're about to create, then we would not have had to add bleed to this. We would have said 0 bleed. On the other hand, if the postcard that we're about to create, and this is the one that I can't find the postcard, but I do have here a wedding invitation. Anyway, so it's not a postcard, but it's a wedding invitation. And it's kind of like postcard formatted. So you guys see that the image in this case does touch the edges. See how it touches the edges everywhere? So there is no space between the image and the edge. And same thing here. Although we had all these nice margins for the text, you see how there's an illustration here that does touch the edge. In fact, the yellow paper doesn't come in yellow. The yellow paper had to be printed with ink. It's not like they bought yellow paper for this because the other side of it is white. So there is color and there is image extending to the edges of the page. As soon as you have color or image extending to the edges of the page, you need to add bleed to your document. Why? When this gets printed, the paper is actually going to be bigger. It's going to be bigger than this. And the image has to extend through to that bleed. So these little kind of golden tassels will continue an extra 1/8 of an inch. This yellow continues an extra 1/8 of an inch. I don't know if I'm so tiny. I'm sharing my screen, so I don't know if you can, I should be sharing just my big image. This image that's in the center here is going to continue to the extra edge of an inch. This cover needs bleed, so this red is going to continue an extra 1/8 of an inch. Versus this one, you could technically have a printer where you put in a piece of paper this size and it gets printed correctly, meaning the image does not touch the edges, right? So when you put in an 8.5 by letter size piece of paper in your printer and it prints something out with a white edge, that means that you didn't have to cut that paper. So with all of these other ones that need bleed, your image has to extend beyond the borders of that, and then a machine has to trim the postcard, the magazine, the package that you've created has to trim to that final size. So now let me share again this document. So now, and let me get that color on my mouse again. So now what we discover is that this is going to be the trim size. So this edge, that's the document size, the one that we wrote 4 1/4 by 6 or 6 by 4 1/4. That's the trim size, trim, meaning that's where it's going to be cut. But your image, if it's going to have to print full bleed, is going to have to be as big as that. Because then the machine's going to come and go choop, 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 choop 4 times to cut these 4 corners, right? And there's always the chance, and invariably it happens, that it will be cut wrong. And I just remember I told you I just sent I hope I cleaned out my, remember I just told you that I had I printed some business cards for my husband the other day that we were in a hurry. So I'm trying to see if I have the samples here. Yes, this is the perfect example. Stop my share again so you can see it bigger. So these are business cards. My husband's a potter, right? So on the other side, there's stuff, on the side, there's stuff. It's kind of hard for you guys to see in my photo, but we were in a hurry. So we got a few printed by one company that gave them to us in a couple of days. And then we had a bunch done by another company. It's the same file, the same everything that I sent out. Can you see in this image a little bit of a difference at all? It's so hard. I don't know if I put my, can you see a bit of a difference between them? There is a subtle color difference, but it's subtle. It's nothing to die for, but each company printed it their way. But you might notice that these are like bowls inside of bowls. The bottom one shows you the middle bowl and it shows you the edge of the second bowl, and then it cuts out. But look at the top one. It still cuts out the second bowl. You saw that? Versus this one, it doesn't. Why is that? I sent them the same file, by the way. When you design something, you hope that every person is going to print it identically and everything's going to be great. But in reality, what happens is that this will go through a machine. It's automatic. They have bazillions of little business cards coming through, and some machines are going to cut their trim right there. Some are going to trim right there. In the case of this, the business card, some machines cut right there and cut the bottom off of that line, and others cut right there. So had I not left,
Diana, can you share your screen?
oh, thank you. No, thank you. In fact, I should probably pull up that business card file. Only it's not in the samples, so I should put it in the samples. So here we go. Imagine this is the bowls, you know, this is my, let me put it in there. That won't work. I have to put it by my nose. These are all the bowls and bowls. And so some of my bowl edges are down here. And what you need to be willing is that anything that is past the margin and between the bleed might be cut off. That's why we say that we can't write outside of this margin, because if I'm putting the address here and it gets cut off, you don't know how to get there. So anything that cannot get cut off has to be inside the safe zone, and that's why the margins are the safe zone, because the trim machine is supposed to come here at the end of the white, but it might go in 1 millimeter in, or 1/8 of an inch in, or 1/8 of an inch out. It might cut wrong. So if it goes in, that's not a problem here. You still have image, but then that means that it'll go in, out there. And so you need to have more image there. Or if it cuts too far, then it'll cut here. You better have some image here. Otherwise you'll have a white line under the image. Does that make sense, you guys? Imagine a piece of, when you cut with the scissors, you know how sometimes you cut and it's like, hey, wobbly, and sometimes you see little white edges. Scissors aren't that adequate. Machines aren't that great at being exactly right. And this was the perfect example for how two different companies both did a good job, but they both are slightly different in color, and they are both slightly different in how they trimmed. So in one, you see the bottom of, so you need to make an image for your business card that can bear being cut in or out, outside of the margins and inside of the bleed. Does that make sense? All of this has to be expendable or okay if it's cut, because you don't know what they're going to do with it. And it does happen, as you see with these things, it does happen that they do it wrong. In fact, if you pay attention to this postcard, look at this postcard. And again, I'm going to stop, and then please remind me to share the other one again. Look at this postcard. There. What do you think about, it's a bit hard to see top and bottom, but look at the left and the right. What do
Yeah,
you see there?
not even.
It's not even. And did it even matter? You buy a postcard that you love, you think you proceed, you don't even think about it. But if you were really the maker of this and you had created this, you'd be really pissed at the printer that they trimmed it off center, right?
Hmm.
Because they left a wider margin on the right and on the left. So as you can see, and this is from the Paul Getty Museum. We went to the Paul Getty to the Getty Museum some weeks ago, and I bought it there. And so this is not about good or bad quality. This is what happens. The trim does not happen in the exact spot. So you need to give that leeway. So it's a good thing they had a good margin there, and that they're still white and that people still buy it and whatnot. But the person who said it is probably really angry and go, "Arr," because they didn't do a good job at centering. I am remembering now to reshare. Good. So I noticed that when I put things as samples and I'm this tiny little box, it's easier if I show myself. Okay, so that's why this is so important. Okay, I just gave you two exact examples from like the last couple of weeks that happened. Look, now you will never look at any publication the same. You'll look at everything and go, I wonder where the edges are to everything. So what this means basically is that when I bring in this photograph from Photoshop, go back to Photoshop. When I bring in this thing from Photoshop, in fact, not really this thing, but this other image. If this is going to be the background of my postcard, and I'm going to turn off the duplicate pot, and I'm also going to turn off the text, because the text is better if we put it in InDesign, and I'll tell you all the reasons why in a minute. But what we don't want to cut out in this case would be what? I mean, it's okay if they trim more here, trim more there, but we probably don't want them to trim wrong there nor there, right? We probably don't want that to be cut off right there. That would be horrible. So we have to be sure that this edge is not in what area? This side, this belly of the jar cannot be in what area?
In that bleed section.
Definitely not in the bleed section, because the bleed is supposed to be cut off. The bleed is supposed to be trimmed off. The trim is supposed to be right there. So we for sure don't want it to be in the bleed section. But where else do we don't want it to be?
Margin.
Ideally, we don't want the belly of that jar to go past the margin. Maybe 1/8 of an inch, but certainly not to the edge. Yeah. Because as I just showed you, it might be that they cut it off here and then you're left with it right. It would be hard for them to go so bad as to cut the whole edge off, but they might end up leaving it right on the edge of the postcard, and then it would look weird if this image was right at the edge of the postcard, right? So we want to have this image probably is not ideal for printing. It looks really cool right now, but it's probably not ideal for printing because there's not enough space here to have this not be cut off, or here. Does it make sense? So there's a couple things we can do in Photoshop, which is we can fake it and move this whole thing over. That's one option. Or we can try to have Photoshop recreate a little bit more of an edge on the sides with this cool tool that's called Content Aware that Photoshop has, where it kind of fills in the edges really well. We'll see how well they do it, but that's what we're going to do. First, we're going to try to place this one in here, and we'll see if we can do it just with this. And if we can't do it with this, then we might have to come in and fix this photograph a little bit. I've done it both ways. I've done it a postcard where it works, but then you can't have the whole image. You have to have only a reduced image, or you can fill it in. So that's the image that we're going to put in here that we're going to have to fix. And then now back in InDesign, remember that we had originally created this with 2 pages because we said we were going to have a one side and the other side of it. So where's that second page? Well, to start with, if you just scroll down, there's that second page. Okay, we created it with 2 pages. So scrolling up and down, you can see our 2 pages. Yep. Now, you're like, really? How come? Yes, anything that has 2 sides to it has to be designed as, in this case, because it's not a book that flips open, it has to be designed as 2 pages. This business card has 2 pages because each side is different. This postcard has 2 pages because there's some text and writing here describing the artist. This invitation has 2 pages. And yes, this also has, this is considered 1 page and this is considered another page, but when they're facing pages like this, this is called the spread. And really, this is 1 page and that is another page, even though it's the other side of the same thing. This is the facing pages, okay? All right, so we're gonna be seeing how to create all these different types of documents. Let me just spend 1 second looking at the time because I'm lost track of that because I didn't take my break. Okay, so we still have 20 minutes. Okay. Since I worked through getting you that handout, my time is sensitive, a little bit distorted. I want to see how much time I had left. All right. So here we go. Basically, if we bring that photo in, hopefully I've made the case for which the photo cannot end right at this edge. It has to end where? At the bleed line, right? It has to end outside of the side that we see white. This is the trim line. This is the final size of the product. This is the 4.5 by 6 that we asked for. But we need to bring in a photo that's actually 1/4 of an inch bigger. It's got the image that we have to bring in has to be what size? If this was 4.25 by 6, what does our photograph size have to be?
475 by 6.5. Oh no, one
No.
450 by 6.2, but
Yes.
125. Okay.
Yes, so let me actually do this here for a second, and I'm not good at maths, but you guys. So if my postcard size is 4.25 by 6, okay? Then the image for going full bleed, okay, has to add 1/8 of an inch, which is 0.125 for each side, left, right, top and bottom, right? For each side, which means you need to basically add 1/4 of an inch total to each dimension. So this is going to be 4.25 plus 0.25, okay, and 6.20, no, just 6 plus 0.25. So my final size is going to be, for the image, for the photo that's going to go in, has to be 4.5, not equal. And then this one has to be 6.25. Does that make sense, you guys?
Mhm.
Is it pretty logical there?
Yep.
That's why 0.125. And by the way, I am Argentinian. I hate this. I hate these sizes. I know there's a couple of you guys who like Tadia is like, yeah, people from out there in the real world, except for 2 countries in the entire world, United States, and I think it's Liberia, some little spot of a country in Africa, and I believe another spot of a country in Asia that still use the imperial system. So yeah, it makes no sense, and I had to learn it, but yeah, that's the way you measure the bleed, 1/8 of an inch. Okay. Let me reshare my screen and get myself the spotlight. Cool. So we need to bring in a photograph that fits that. So let's go back to Photoshop and let's resize that photo and see if that's going to work for us. Okay, are we all back in Photoshop? Turn off the little floating guy and turn off the text because we're not going to use them here. We're going to put these things in InDesign. We're going to put the floater is not going to, the floater is going to be for the back, but the text is going to be put in InDesign. So let's see if this is going to work for us. So let's go to image size, and see if we can resize this image safely and make it fit the proportions, because proportionally, we don't even know if this image is going to work right now with the
Sorry, you're
4x4.
back in Photoshop, right?
I'm back in
You're just
Photoshop.
Okay, thank you.
Go back to Photoshop, turn off these other layers that we've been using.
Right.
Turn it
Okay.
off and turn it off. Go back to that original. And then up here, go to the word image and whoops, image and image size. Okay. All right. So here we have, if you scooch it around, you can see the whole thing because it centers in the center, but that's our image. And right now, we already have it set up at 300 PPI, which I told you is the golden rule, and you're going to learn more about it once you read all your handouts. So we'll talk about it later, but just trust me, this is ready to go to print at 300 PPI. But it's too big. It's 10 by 6.6. So what we need to be very careful about right now is that we don't want to resample. Again, I'll explain why not once you read the handout. So after break, we'll understand why. Right now, just turn off the resample. Some 3 of you guys who have been in my Photoshop class, we just did that explanation. We're going to talk about it here later. So just turn that off. Turn the check mark off there. That's all. Right now, just trust. We don't want to resample this image. We just want to resize it. So once you turn the resample off, I wish that word were changed to the word resize, but it doesn't. But now what we're doing is we're resizing. So now let's go over here to width and type. What's the number we need to type?
6.5. 6.25.
Exactly, 6.25. So if that becomes 6.25, our height becomes 4.16. And is that right?
No,
Close. We're going to lose a little.
No, this is not enough.
Oh,
Right now, we need
4.5 right?
4.5, so this is not enough.
Hmm.
So if we get the width exactly right, we're going to end up having not enough stuff for the top and bottom. So let's shift that and first type in our height, which would be 4.5. And then that tells me that it's going to end up being 675. Width, which means then that we need to chop off a piece on the width,
Mhm.
right? And that makes more
Yep.
sense. That makes more sense to chop off some of the width. We can take some of that left side off without hurting the image. Yeah. So let's go for this. We're not going to chop it here. Here we just resize it to the biggest size we need. Ignore the resolution for now. Everything is fine. Say okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and say command minus. You might, if you see the rulers, you'll see that on the left it's like 0 and it's 4.5 right there. If I try to draw a line, your mouse draws that little line on the ruler, and it's showing me that if I point to the bottom of this image, it's at 4.5, and I put to the tip of this image, it's at 6.75. Okay. Well, we don't want 6.75. We want 6.25, right? So that means we need to get rid of 1/2 inch off of this image. And that means we actually need to crop 1/2 inch off of this image. So let's head over here to the left to the crop tool, which is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or something like that. It's like this little icon right there is a crop tool. And if you don't know which one it is, because it's so tiny, the short key for crop tool is C for crop. So click on the C on your keyboard and you're in your crop tool. All right. So when you click on your crop tool, you might notice or not, but you've got little handles everywhere right now on the sides. So what matters right now, I don't know what's your default set for cropping, but the one thing I want us to do, I don't want this photo to be affected forever. And so over here on the far right, and it's hard to see, it's so tiny, but right over here, it says delete crop pixels. My delete crop pixels is checked. You see that? I don't want to have it checked. When I crop something, I don't want to get rid of those pixels. I want to be able to undo that and have the entire image, because some other time I might want to print this as a 5x7. I want those. So I'm going to uncheck the delete crop pixels for now, because I don't want this to be a permanent destructive modification. I want this to be non-permanent. So by taking that off, it's not going to delete them. It's just going to hide them for a bit. Okay. Now over here in ratio, if you click on ratio, you can forcefully say that you want things to be a certain ratio, 2x5, 7 by this by that, blah, blah, blah. But the number that we have isn't really any of them, because it's not even 4x6. It's not any of these. It's kind of that in between. It's not a fixed ratio. The postcard size doesn't come as a fixed ratio. So instead, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to write, I can write, what was the width first?
6.25.
6.25. And then here, I'm going to write 4.5. So now it's showing me here what that means. What is in gray is what's going to be chopped out, and what is in color is going to stay. Do you think that's a good crop?
No.
No.
No. Already we know that whatever's on the edge has to go to the bleed. So basically right now that's going to be all chopped off. So we can grab this and drag it over and choose, well, the other way around, choose to have the crop be that stuff is going to go instead of this stuff. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yeah.
You move it over so that if something's going to be cropped, it's going to be cropped from this edge. And we also might need to still add some here. For now, we'll see. But if we want this whole image, this is the first set that we need to do. If we like it, if that is set up to the right size, I'm noticing up here that it went up to 2.48 instead of 2.5. I don't know why, but let's go back to 2.5. We want to be pretty exact. Okay. And now we're ready. We can click on this little check mark, or we can hit the return key. And remember, because we turned off the delete crop pixels, then this won't be gone and lost forever. It's still going to work. We're going to just say check mark. And if I ever want that, and watch, don't do this because I don't want this to mess up. But see, if I want this, if I push over, it's still there. It hasn't gone away. Okay, it's still there. Versus on this side, there's nothing there, because there's nothing there. So I'm going to Control-Z and do that. So that other stuff is still there. but my image is now the right proportion for my postcard. Let's go ahead and give this a little save, Control or Command S. For those of you who don't like shortcuts, then go up to File and say Save. I recommend that if you don't know shortcuts, when I am here in class, go ahead and do them because I am saying them all the time. So force yourself to do them because then after that, they start becoming second nature. Like if I say Control S, don't go and go do the menu one because that's really the kind of stuff that'll make you work much faster in the future is when you really start using shortcuts well. Okay, so Control or Command S is the way we save. And now we have this image. We're going to leave it layered and we're going to place it inside of our InDesign. But we first sized it correctly. Other times you don't know what size you want. You can be free, you can organize, you can create an InDesign, but this time we're very clear. It needs to fit that size. And so we went ahead into Photoshop and already pre-sized it correctly. Now we got to see what's going to happen here, if that's going to be enough, or if we need to come back into Photoshop and do something about that. So let's head over to InDesign. And it's time to try to bring in that photograph. So we're going to go ahead and say File, Place. File, Place. All right. And then this window, wherever those of you who are working at home, you'll have it at home. Those of us who are working inside of VDI, we have to go to My Drive, and you might already have it set in the right place, but just in case, My Drive and then Digital Design Techniques. And here it is. We had called that one Mexico PSD. The red jar is the little tiny floating jar that we made that we're not using yet, right? This is the one called Mexico PSD. And you might, whatever you called it, the one that we've been, if you don't remember what you called it, if you didn't call it Mexico, then go back to Photoshop and look at the file name. It's this one. In my case, it's Mexico PSD. All right. And we're going to go ahead and say open. And here it is. It's hanging out at the tip of my mouse. Does everyone have a little floating mini tiny thumbnail at the tip of your mouse? Are we okay with that? Before I move forward, I'll make sure everyone's got it. People who I don't see, give me a big old yes. All right, so we'll learn different ways to place things. There's so many different ways to place things. It's ridiculous, but what we're going to do this one, we know this is the best case scenario. We already sized it correctly, and that's the best way to work, to have something already sized. But sometimes you don't know yet if you want to make it bigger or smaller in the design. So sometimes it doesn't come ready to go, but this one is ready to go. So I'm going to put my mouse where? Where do I put my mouse? If I want this to fill the right top left corner like that.
I would think, yeah.
No.
No, center.
Bleed.
No.
top left corner of my bleed.
Well, that's what I meant. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I thought you
that's
were in the bleed.
okay. No, I was just showing. That's my trim.
I
went
thought your
in the
mouse
top.
was in the bleed. Got it.
No, that's
Okay.
fine. In the top left corner of my bleed. That now you can't see because of my little red thing, but you should see the tip of your mouse. Click there one time, and the photo will drop in exactly right. And I'm saying exactly right because had we dropped it in here, then it's going to drop in there. And now I have extra left over, right? Because we resized it correctly. And if I drop it in there, in this point, then again, we have leftover stuff. It's too big. But if we sized it for bleed in Photoshop and we click on the bleed, then it should fit exactly right where we see bleed. That's safety in case something goes, no, that's not safety. That is what should end up in the trash. This is like what should end up in the trash. And this margin is the safety area. Okay. And then this is the area that is for sure safe. Yes, Ryan?
So would you want to move that pot or
Hold
would
on.
that be an okay?
Yeah, hold on. Ryan has a question. I want to make sure everyone got it in first. Yes, Ryan?
Mine turned out really pixelated. I don't know.
Yeah, yes.
And I have it on at 100%.
No, it's not
Oh.
that. It's something
Oh.
set up. So go back to the edit preferences, everyone. If yours looks pixelated, go to your edit preferences. And let's head down to display performance. So mine is looking really good because I already adapted it, but over here, yours probably doesn't say high quality. It probably says typical or fast in here as well. Typical or fast. You need to switch it to high quality. Now, warning. This is just how we view it. If you have a slow computer or a computer that, you know, is groaning as it does its work, leave it and not high quality, because that pixelated version that you're seeing, that's fine. It's just a preview of what's coming in. And it makes this pages go faster if they show pixelated. The image will print correctly, but if you're like, oh, I need to see exactly how it looks and my computer's working, then have it view as quite high quality, which is what I said there, and then say, okay. And then that image will pop in and it'll be high quality. But for some people that slows down their display, it depends. So did that work, Ryan?
It still looks pixelated.
Maybe you need to delete it and
Hmm.
bring it in again. Go ahead and say Control Command Z to get rid of what you just did and then bring it in again. Sometimes you need to close InDesign and open it in again. I don't know. It's one of those kind of things that might need, because it needs to change the whole, it's probably going to need to be closed and opened in again. But since class is almost over, don't bother. Close it afterwards and open it again. Okay. And then it'll be set at high quality. But again, this is just a preview. Here's what matters. What we just did is just linking the file. So from now on, my InDesign file has to go parallel to my Photoshop file, and they both need to kind of work in tandem together. Because if you notice right up here on the top left, there's a little icon of a little, again, you can't see it in mine because the room is so tiny, but do you see a little tiny chain link? That means if I hold on to this, that means that I have placed a file, but I'm not embedding it in my document. It's not truly in my document. It's just saying, oh, here, I want you to look at that file, the Photoshop one, and display what I should be seeing. Now, if I were to close this file, set it up, and then somehow move this Mexico file to another place, and when I open InDesign again, this chain link will be broken. And we're gonna practice that because this happens with Illustrator, with InDesign, it happens with all of them. You lose connection to that file, and Illustrator and InDesign will go, hello, what's up? Where's that file, right? And you need to put it back in the same place in the computer, in the same folder, and it'll go, oh, there you are, thank you. So I'll be showing you how to do that. That's a lot of what goes into this class, is understanding linked files with embedded files. So this is a linked file. And thus, if you see it, the pixelated preview or not, in the end, what matters is that it should be correct in its resolution and everything in Photoshop, okay? But once you reopen InDesign, it should show up not pixelated. Now, the next question that I'm going to leave you with, because it is 4 p.m., that Liz asked was, well, what do you guys think about the placement of this vase? As far as all of our bleed lines and stuff. Let me show you a trick. When you see the bleed lines, it's kind of hard to tell because it looks like everything's fine. The way it's going to look when the bleed has been cut off can be imitated by hitting the W key. When you hit the W key, you lose all those lines and you lose your bleed. And this is showing me the trim size. This is actually 6 by 4 1/4. This is the image without the bleed. And remember, the bleed is 1/8 of an inch safety to one side and 1/8 of an inch safety to the other side, right? It's like 1/4 of an inch that can be cut off. So do you think we have that safety margin here with this image? Best case
Pretty
scenario, it cuts like this and it's kind of at the edge, but it could work depending on what I do here. Worst case scenario, the cut could be 1/8 of an inch in, and then basically my red belly would be kind of touching the cut, and my bottom would be touching the crop, right?
Mhm.
Worst case scenario, if the trim goes really wrong, you see what I mean?
Mhm.
So worst case scenario, which we always need to consider, it's not going to cut it off. So worst case scenario, it's not terrible. It's not absolutely disastrous, but it's probably not too good, right?
Mhm.
So maybe what we could need to consider is editing this image in Photoshop to create a bit more background and bottom so that we can put this a little bit further in more comfortably, right? Or, and I'm not going to do this, but plan B would be, I could actually decide, you know what, this image isn't working too well. How about I print a postcard where the photo is comfortably inside, and I'm going to go ahead. Oh, I didn't do that correctly. I need to show you. I'm in a hurry, so I'm doing it right. My shortcuts in Photoshop, I tend to use the wrong shortcuts for past. I'll show you how to do this next time. Or I can decide that what I want is to print this postcard like that with a little margin around it and go, you know what, I give up this. This doesn't work for the bleed, and it'll work fine if it has bleed. So sometimes your image just doesn't give you what you want. You need to go choose another image. Choose when you photograph something that's going to be printed, you got to try to, what if it prints in vertical and horizontal and landscape, extra, you photograph it a couple different ways to give the designer that leeway. We're the designers right now. If this photo doesn't give us leeway and we really need the whole thing, this is probably the best solution for this image. I'm going to undo that, because what we're going to explore next week is whether we can do something to it in Photoshop or not. Right now, let's save this file. And for today, we're going to be done. So this file is untitled. So we're going to go ahead and save it. So we'll say File Save or Control S. And we're going to go put it again for you guys who have it in your own computer, wherever you're putting your files. But for Google, for those of us who are in VDI, we're going to have to go to Google Drive and My Drive, Digital Design Techniques, and we're going to save it right there. We're going to call this one postcard_Mexico. So, and notice that the extension that's being given to it is the .indd. .indd is an InDesign document. Okay. So now we're going to say save. And there you go. That will be waiting for us next week. The best way for us VDI people is to gently back out of everything, close each file, close each application. If you close without closing all the applications, you end up in trouble with VDI. It's not happy. So go in, and you don't need to close each file, but in your computer, it'll handle it. But in VDI, it needs to retrieve them from the Google Drive. So we need to close everything really well. In your own computer, if you leave them open, when you open Photoshop, again, they'll still be open. But in InDesign, it's going to mess it up with the Google Drive. So we back out of everything. And again, for VDI people, don't forget to go down to this bottom little icon, open up the Google Drive, grab that little gears, preferences, and disconnect your account. Say disconnect, and that's it. And then next week, we'll be met with the good old sign in. Again, for VDI, we need to go all the way down to the little start button and turn off, shut down the power. Say shut down the power to our VDI computer. And that's going to sign us out of Windows. And then the last thing is, when this is over, we're going to sign out. You have been disconnected from Windows, from the desktop. But now we need to go over here and sign out, log out from VDI. So log out from VDI, say okay to that, and you know you're done when you're back at the beginning. Okay. Stop my share. All right, those of you who are at home, it's your choice to close it, open it, keep working on other stuff, make your own little postcard with an image that you have, you know, try to do some stuff. I didn't show the, here's the Padlet that that I created, and some people posted some. Let me go back to my home. That's my Photoshop Padlet. Let me show you the InDesign Padlet, the Digital Design Techniques Padlet. I'm sorry, some of you guys posted some great photos that you've been creating. What I would request you add to these is if you've done anything to any of these, beyond taking the picture, if you've done any editing and Photoshop, and in right now, most of you basically just know Photoshop, go ahead and add and say, oh, to this one, I lightened, I darkened, I changed the sky, I didn't, or nothing. This is a straight shot. This is what I took. Thank you. And this is why you're posting it. But what I would like you, since we have 2 weeks, beyond having all of this, beyond having all of this time to read all your handouts, is that maybe you do go and you resize an image, or you crop an image, or you put some text over something that we've done and post it up here. The only thing you can't upload is InDesign files won't work. So if you do anything in InDesign, do a screenshot of it to post it or something like that, okay? All right. Cool. No class next week. See you in 2 weeks. Email me if you have any questions when I'm on break. If I'm here, I'll answer. If I'm not here, I won't answer. But other than that, we'll see you. Have fun. Stay safe. And don't forget that the week after we come back, I'll start Illustrator. So if some of you guys are not in the Illustrator file and want to be in it, let me know. If it's closed, I can let you in. I don't know if it's closed. I should check. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye, Janet.